We are definitely live. Welcome to Virtual Connecting. I'm Alan Levine coming to you from my humble home in Strawberry, Arizona, and we got a group of fantastic colleagues from various places, you'll find out, but most importantly, we're connecting to the last day of the Hybrid Pedagogy Lab event in Cairo, Egypt, in fact. So to introduce everybody, I'll call on my virtual buddies first. Of course, who you are, where you're from, and I'm going to ask you what's the closest you've been geographically to Egypt. And then for those in Egypt, I'll ask you to pick one person's location from our group and say what's the closest you've been to them. So if I was doing this, I'm Alan Levine. An itinerant indie web tech geek from Arizona, and the closest I've been to Egypt is Qatar, and I'll call him Michael next.
Good morning. I'm Michael Berman. I'm in California. I work for the California State Universities, and the closest I've been to Egypt would be Italy.
Excellent. And next is Autumn.
Hey, Autumn Keynes from Columbus, Ohio. I guess the closest I've been is New Delhi, India.
That's sort of close. And then I'll say hello to Mark.
Hello, I'm Mark, and I'm in Doha, Qatar, and the closest I've been to Egypt is Egypt.
That works. And then Susan.
Hi, I'm Susan, and the closest I've been to Egypt is South Africa.
All right. So, and then for the folks there in Cairo, you can just say hello if you want to. You don't have to play my game, but you can say the closest you've been to anybody else's location that you see on the screen now.
Hi everybody, I'm Nadina Belmagd. I'm the virtual buddy for today's, the on-site buddy for today's session. Obviously I've not got the terminology perfectly down. And I work at the Center for Learning and Teaching here at AUC. I want to pick, you're the US, and Jose here is from Mozambique. So I'm from Cairo, originally from here. I would say the closest I've been to the U.S. would be the U.S. I've been to the West and the East Coast, so kind of all rounded. And I've not been anywhere in Africa, so I that's the closest I've been is Cairo. I'm going to pass this around. We have Sean, Maha here, and Jose. So I'm going to pass it around for introductions.
So I'm Sean Michael Morris, and I'm the Director of Digital Pedagogy Lab, and have been here in Cairo these last few days helping to run the institute. I'm going to actually pick one of the virtual folks to say how close I've been to there, because Susan and I live in the same city. We both are in Portland. So I actually know how early it is over there, Susan, and you need to sleep more.
She's been on every single one.
That's very intense because it's very early there right now.
There was this one day where we watched the sunrise with her.
Yeah, it's very very early. So, okay.
And I'm Maha Bali, and do I need to introduce myself like every time?
I don't know.
From the American University in Cairo in Egypt, and I was the organizer of the Digital Pedagogy Lab Cairo. And I've lived in Texas, where I think Mark is from, and I've visited California, where Michael and George Station are. So I've been pretty close to a lot of people. I've not been anywhere else in Africa, actually. I've been to Dubai, and I lived in Kuwait, so I'm close to where Mark is now. Not giving you too much information.
Who are you? Who are you?
Another Maha. My name is Maha Abdelmunam. I'm from Egypt, Cairo, and I'm a trainer, not a mainstream educator. The closest that I've been to the States is Germany, I guess, but the closest that I've been to a couple of you is Qatar. I've been to Qatar. I lived in Dubai for a long, long time, so I've been jumping around.
And Jose.
Voilà.
Hi, Jose Costa. I teach in the Graduate School of Education, and I'm originally from Mozambique. The closest I've been, if I remember correctly, must be Susan is in Portland, whichever Portland it is, if it's Oregon or Maine, I've been close to both of them.
Well done.
Right. And I live in Syracuse, New York, so I'm also close to Ohio. You know.
Excellent. We're all that close. And then George Station just popped in. George, we just been saying hello, where you are, and the closest you've been geographically to Egypt.
Okay, good morning. Can you hear me okay?
Absolutely.
Okay, hi, good morning everybody. And I am also on the West Coast. I'm in the Monterey area, so I'm in that early time zone with Susan. And Alan, I guess same thing, right?
Yep.
As far as time zones. So let's see, the closest I've been to Egypt, believe it or not, my prior career was the U.S. Navy, and we did a ship visit, so I have actually been to Alexandria. So I guess I've been, and had a great time, and enjoyed it. That was in a previous century, but it was a lot of fun.
All right, I think you win the prize, George. Not that I have a prize.
We have two more people who just walked in, so a very quick round of interviews for Iman and Dimitris. You guys just say who you are. Yeah, there are a lot more people. Okay, we'll say hi. Yeah, we have David Risley here.
Hi, David Risley from American University of Beirut. We just finished our on-conference, so woohoo!
Let's start.
Okay, let's get started.
People can introduce themselves as they talk.
Yeah, sure.
That sounds good.
Okay. Go for it.
So some people have been asking me, like, what's the plan for this, or like, what's the topic?
I would never ask that.
Oh, okay. A few people did.
Well, I'm the newbie. I asked that, right? You know, now I know.
It's a fair question, and I told them that I don't have one. That to me, this is like at a conference or meeting where just the conversations happen. But obviously, we have a huge group from people who've been there for several days, and today was the unconference. And of course, we don't want to ask you to recap anything, but can you recap it?
You know what I'd like to hear about the unconference is what topic was really popular, and maybe a reality check of maybe were there topics that you decided not to talk about in the unconference?
Okay, so that's a great question. I was the person, along with Maho, who were co-facilitating, and I was the one given this is David speaking in the back, I made up the schedule, and we actually had, like, what was interesting is that we had it, the proposals for the unconference as a Google Doc, so they were kind of coming in and out of existence throughout the whole pedagogy lab. So some of the topics that got pushed forward kind of disappeared by crowd, erasure. So I don't really know all the things. We actually found room for almost everything. We collapsed a couple together. So there wasn't anything we really didn't talk about. This is the first one that's gone on here, so I think we sort of found room for everybody. But we talked about taking all this home. We talked about video capture for student feedback. We talked about big data and pedagogy, Medium, TPAC, beyond the LMS, the indie web. I mean, pretty awesome topics for a first unconference in Cairo. So
great, thank you.
So this is a relatively new idea for those there in Cairo?
Yep, pretty much.
Were people confused?
I wouldn't say confused. They were.
Yeah, I would say that the hardest thing was the idea of just the idea, right? Like that we didn't know what we were going to do, and then we didn't know where the rooms were, and then like I want to do this and I want to do that, and it's at the same time, and so the kind of normal confusion of a conference that's put right to the forefront in an But I think people jumped right into it. I mean, people kept. I don't know if you've seen the collective the Google Docs, but there are docs now made about all the sessions. So we're going to wrap it up and try to do a little publication of the proceedings. So I think people did really great for their first one.
And the other thing is that even though I'm supposed to be facilitating the unconference and I'm supposed to be this organic person, I actually had 3 things planned already for today, and I'm like, these are required, that they will happen, whether or not people want to come to them. So one of them was the sponsor of this event is called Amical, and it's a consortium of American liberal arts universities that are outside the U.S. And they sponsored the event. I organized the event, and we're trying to keep things going beyond this event. So we had a virtual meeting with some people who couldn't make it, and a group of us from here who are here and who are interested in that. And so we had that discussion, which I thought it's kind of unconferencey. It's just pre-planned unconferencey, just not. I mean, you know. And then I also had, I needed just to meet with Sean and Jesse and things like that to reflect, and to meet with Jeff, who was also the Amical person. So that's completely different. So I had actually no idea what happened in the unconference. I was there for the first half hour, and then I let David do everything, and he's great at planning these things. He's done it so much before, and thank you.
I'm hearing myself. For Sean, who's led the conferences, maybe from his perspective as to how this group swam in this stream of eventness.
Oh, cool. Hi. I've led a couple of event conferences. I actually was going to comment that I find that the unconference at the end of a conference like this isn't actually a conference so much as it is an institute, but at the end is actually really important, because it does give an opportunity not only for reflection, but it also gives an opportunity for people to figure out ways to take some of the stuff that can be heavily theoretical that we talk about, how to take that home and make it practical. And they do that by applying it to specific topics that they're interested in, and talking to each other about that. It is very difficult sometimes to talk about pedagogy in a practical sense, especially when you're a group of 28 people in a room, because each of them have a different each of them need different practical applications. So I think the unconference actually is a very successful way to do that.
I want to hear from the participants. Does anybody want to say how they felt about the unconference or the event as a whole? Not everyone. So we've had 2 kinds of participants: those who participate in the entire event, and those who were able to participate in some of the events, like the keynotes and the unconference and some workshops. And so, but I'm very happy that a lot of the people did come to the unconference who weren't in the full event. So I was just wondering if anybody from the back wants to volunteer.
Someone's volunteering?
Okay. Oh, sure. I think am I now? Oh, here I am. Here I am. I'd just like to say it was very inspiring and stimulating. Gave me some. Okay. I work with CLT a lot to help enhance my teaching, and I'm thankful for that. And this just took it one step further. So I'm just very thankful for this experience.
Anybody else? Questions or comments, or you guys over there?
Let's hear some specifics. What did you guys do in these unconferences?
Okay, I think David just kind of said.
So in my session, actually in Antonio Lopez's session from John Cabot University of Rome, he's already left. So he was the one who actually proposed this. We had a conversation about what he called digital environment and climate change. And so we had a really interesting conversation about how we very often turn to things like self-quant devices, also to metrics about this, our devices and ourselves, but we don't actually think about the specific relationship that exists with those devices in the environment. And so we were brainstorming a little bit, looking through apps that were supposed to be earth-friendly or green, and we were sort of trying to push that conversation a little bit further. And we were talking a little bit about how sustainability is a kind of fetish topic in the digital humanities, and along those lines. So that was one of our sessions.
That's cool. I remember there was an app for a while that people could measure the decibel level of where they were in the world, so you can kind of get a map of noise levels around the world. I don't remember what it was called, but.
Dimitris.
I did the IndieWeb session. Hi, Alan. I'm Dimitri.
Hey,
Finally.
it's about time we met.
Of course.
Okay.
Pleasure. That's why I ran as soon as I heard your name. So I did a brief introduction to IndieWeb, showed them the Indie Webcamp website, and we sort of flew over the Indie Webcamp, and took a snapshot, like an aerial photo of what's there, and showed people what is out there, and now they're free to explore.
Okay. Susan asked a question on the chat. I want to ask it to everybody around here in case you guys didn't get a chance to see it. So Susan says that Bonnie spoke about how being networked has changed her mind. So Susan was curious if anybody had that experience, or like networking changed their mind in any way, or about something specific. Over here. Yeah, go for it.
Okay. I think I'll talk about what happened here. I mean, networking here. It was very refreshing. I changed my mind about people in education, because I've seen you all, you know, online. I know that you're very progressive, that you care about education, but people in the system who are not online, I didn't know, and I felt that maybe they're not. I was very happy to see so many people who are so interested and so hungry for more. And I think they just didn't know, or didn't have the chance. And I hope that they can do more, or, you know, like get the chance to explore more, and they are not stopped. So my mind is that, or how I changed. First of all, my perception of people in education in Egypt, but also that yes, there are opportunities to collaborate. It's not
right. I think this whole opportunities to collaborate is one of the big things that's coming out of this event, and people are seeing potential for that.
Yep. I want to build on that hungry for more idea. I want to ask Sean and Mahan, everybody here and virtually, and Alan, what do you guys think of practical ways in which to actually take this forward, and for people to make time, effort, and work on projects collaboratively online? What are some of the practical ways you would give to people who are maybe just starting, or have been doing this for just a little bit of time and want to take it forward and want to make something big out of this?
Well, I would suggest, I think first of all that there's sort of an unconference that's constantly going on using the hashtag DigPed. Yep. There's a huge network on Twitter, and it's actually easier than you would think to find collaborators there on certain projects, and to join in. I mean, we run monthly chats on DigPed, but it really is just a sort of ongoing thing. So at any point when you want to raise a topic, you want to talk to somebody about something, there's an entire community, global community, that's really waiting to collaborate with you. So I think that's one of the first ways. I think the other thing is to recall that, and we try to talk about this during the institute, is that pedagogy is really an orientation, and so when we talk about like the practical aspect of it, so much of it is taking the orientation back to your class, or taking the orientation back to your work, so that you change the way you think, and then that's how you change the way you work, or the way you act or teach, because everyone has unique situations and unique sets of resources, so it's really about the mindset more than anything else. But I would love to hear what other people think as well.
Oh, nice.
I guess I'll jump in, and I'll just say, don't underestimate the power of the virtual experience. I felt really connected to a lot of the folks that were there physically, and just being able to communicate and talk to people and be a part of these kind of sessions. So, I mean, yeah, there's stuff that's always going on, but if you can find a time to connect to a conference, and there's a couple of more digital pedagogy labs coming up too. I know one in PEI and one in Virginia. If you can find those hotspot moments where there's going to be a lot of people communicating at one particular time, or over a couple of days, if you can find a way to plug in during that specific time. And those are really rich moments.
I think George has his hand raised in the chat. He's doing Mr. Cotter.
So that's aging myself there with a TV sitcom from, I think, the 70s there. But anyway, my experience, because I had a couple of face-to-face interactions last year with a lot of the folks through the Digital Pedagogy Lab, but also the D-Learn conference last fall. And one of the things that came out of that is I'm going to suggest if you can connect with any one of the people that you've connected with during this conference, just like within a month of the conference, before the conference fever or the institute fever wears off. The reason I say that is because Bonnie and I had an interaction after the D-Learn conference with my class. She was able to pop into my class, my face-to-face class for a while, which is a technology and society class that it's basically blended. But she was able to pop in, and that allowed us to reconnect with some of the ideas that we had discussed earlier. And in fact, since she had been in that interviewed heavily for that article in the Atlantic several months ago, that was sort of the common reading that got my students connected with Bonnie as well. So if you could just connect with any one other person in some synchronous thing, I'm kind of a fan of synchronous. It doesn't have to be this kind, but some kind of synchronous thing to reconnect within like a month, so you're still thinking about the conference and you're feeling good about the conference, etc.
That's really solid advice, George. I won't call you Arnold Horshack. Just to be
Thank you very much.
But I get the reference.
Susan is asking about any specific collaborations that we've already decided on. The Amical people are starting to think about ways of co-teaching certain things that several of them teach the same thing. We're thinking about doing professional development together, whether with Digital Pedagogy Lab or just with each other. And because you come to this event and for an intense 3 days, 3 and 4 days now, you're really getting to know someone, their thinking process and so on, trying to think about how you could benefit from that. Does anybody else want to add anything? I just wanted to say something small, and then I have to run, but if people want to keep talking, that's fine. Is that I think, people like Alan and Autumn and Michael really well know that for me, my relationships with virtual people are real, but people here don't really believe me. How can you call these people your friends? And I'll give you a minute. And then, the next day they're here, they're seeing my daughter and they're playing with her, and she's used to them because she's seen them before online. The day after, I'm co-facilitating something with Bonnie. Day after that, co-facilitating with Jesse. We help each other a lot in the event. So I don't know exactly what these guys were coming here to say, but I could contribute very smoothly and just be adding to it because we know each other's minds, I think, much more than maybe even maybe Nadine knows my mind a little bit because she's on Twitter. But anyone else, you don't sit all day telling people what you write all the time. But if someone's following your writing, they know a lot about how you're thinking, much more than someone who just sees you every day for 5 hours, but doesn't really know what you're thinking. So, David?
I just want to, I'm actually going to sort of roll what Maha just said together with the previous question about what your misconceptions were. I mean, Maha and I had some pre-conference, pre-lab conversations about how many different feeds should come in, how many different places we might want to look. And I was a little bit skeptical about the multiplication of feeds. I am a kind of a one conference, one Twitter guy, and actually one hashtag guy. So the one thing that I gave up, actually, interestingly, or changed my mind a little bit about is the desire to make a hashtag that's very specific to a conference as opposed to tweeting to the general one. And I just want to say that, Autumn, I actually thought you were here. I'm sorry, but there are so many people at the conference that I don't know that I just thought you were already in Cairo here live tweeting. You were so present in the conversation, which is amazing to me, but I guess I just didn't look at the picture because, of course, I saw you on the other virtual. Anyway, whatever. That's just that's talk about the collapsing of the real and the virtual. So
the live stream of the lab. So thank you for that.
She was in the room next to you all the time. I think there's something I like George's ideas, and there's a bit of the how much you can plan and how much you just have to sort of like let happen. So you can't completely let go and hope this stuff spontaneously happens, but there are things like George suggested, like touching base. There's also like you're thrown in this large pool of people in this hashtag. Sometimes people on their own will coalesce in smaller groups and start just connecting with each other. So finding this balance of how much you can sort of set up and organize with things and how much you kind of just give people the room to be like yeast cells, for those who were here earlier. I told you I'd get yeast in here. To let these things somewhat spontaneously happen. And the connections, often they will happen wonderfully and surprise you, and sometimes they just may roll their own way. It's human interaction.
Do any of you guys on the virtual end have any questions? Yeah, sure. Yeah, please go for it.
Yeah, I just wanted to share kind of a powerful moment around the Google Doc that did the crap detection. I think that was in Sean's session. I wasn't even in the session, but I got on the Google Doc, and we're going through an LMS review right now. And I actually was kind of shaking because it was such a powerful and provocative thing to do. And I shared it with our whole team of instructional designers and the director of the Teaching and Learning Center. And I mean, people basically came running to my desk going, "You can do that? Thank you so much." And there's a whole conversation around the trust between corporations and ed technology and higher ed, and it was actively happening right there. And they all want to go back to the doc, and like as we're kind of deciding, and looking at these things, it just brought a whole nother layer to our process. So I just want to thank you for that, but that's sort of an example of how I am utilizing it and playing out like what's possible. Because that was a huge shift in our process, or can be. I don't know, it's still emerging, obviously, but it's very exciting.
Hi. As an outsider insider, I really just ran into this, and I thought it's kind of a very interesting session. And so one thing I can say is that one of the problems is I thought I was alone in my own world of using media and virtual connections to have all these panels and stuff in different classes that I've taught. But coming into this session made me realize that I'm actually not alone. And that was very comforting to know that there is a community that actually engages in these things. And you talked about the way forward, the sorts of networks that one can establish. And I know that wherever I go, it doesn't matter where I'll be, there's a community I can tap into and say, hey, I would like to organize a session to talk about, let's say virtual policy, on and media-related policy kind of stuff, or talk about some sort of new technology that is emerging and how it's going to impact people. So I know where to go now, and I'm very happy about that. It's good to have met all of you guys.
That's amazing. Thank you for sharing that, Jose. You guys on the virtual end want to comment, ask Sean any questions while he's here, while we still have him right here?
Did he sleep?
I'm going to have to run away for a minute, so I'm going to say goodbye to everybody, but I just want to thank everyone so much for an amazing conference. And even though I was participating from so far away, you guys made me feel really welcome, and I learned a lot. So thank you for that.
Thank you, Otto. Bye. Have a good one.
Bye.
Bye.
I'm a little struck. There are so many. What might be overwhelming to people that, oh my God, there's Twitter hashtags and there's documents and there's Hangouts. And like it could be overwhelming, but I was just thinking of what a wonderful thing is that there are so many different levels at which people can try this, because in the old days when I started, it was email. That was how you did connecting, and it was only email. And so the fact that we have kind of this rich buffet should be a positive. I know people sometimes get caught up in the being flooded by information.
Well, let me just make a comment. I'm just fascinated by this sort of idea of dropping in, right? So let's drop in and see what's going on, and have a third space, thinking about famous cultures like, say, Paris and down to the wine bar, and there'd always be an interesting conversation, and you just walk in.
Michael, you're breaking up a little bit. We can't really hear you very clearly.
He's got some Wi-Fi.
It's so profound what I'm saying. I feel from that. Let me try in short chunks, maybe. I'm just talking about the idea of being able to drop in on a conversation, and there's a conversation that's always going on, and you have access to it. And I think that's what fascinates me. And so I think we're moving towards a world where there's a kind of virtual cafe, and there's a conversation always with some people you know and some you don't, and some you like and maybe some you don't like as well. But you're always welcome to join in the conversation. That's what fascinates me.
I think that's a very good point, and I love the cafe metaphor. I feel like moments like Digital Pedagogy Lab, or events like Digital Pedagogy Lab, or the MOOC conversation that goes on with hybrid pedagogy. These are moments in a continuum. Like I said, I mean, the conversation is ongoing. It's always there, and then we have these moments of focus. Where people come together either on the ground, and it's actually one of the reasons why we want to have Digital Pedagogy Lab events be on ground, is because there's a way in which, strangely, you actually expand the network that way. More people will come. People who aren't on Twitter will show up, and then by the time the 3 or 4 days is over, they're on Twitter and they're part of the network. And so you're making I guess you're expanding the cafe. It's getting bigger and bigger and bigger, right? And then that conversation just keeps going on. So yeah, and I wanted to say the same thing about Autumn. I felt like Autumn was here. In fact, at one point I was like, wait, I looked around there. Is Autumn here? I didn't know she was here. I didn't know she was coming. Yeah, and it's interesting too. I mean, you look at this situation. I mean, I've met Alan once in person at MLA, but I know Alan. Right, and George, I knew you before I met you in person. I mean, everyone here I've met online before I've met them. You know, in many cases, before I've met them in person, and it's just fascinating to have this community now expanding in an international way that it hasn't before. So I'm really grateful for everything that's happened here. This has just been an incredible experience here.
That's great.
We're all envious, John. I just want to let people know that, you know, obviously the doors will stay here as long as you guys want to sit around and chat, but if you do have to go, that's certainly fine.
I do think we're going to start wrapping up, so if anybody has any last comments or questions, feel free to ask them, because, I mean, we all have to get going in a couple of minutes, so...
Sure. What's the first thing you're going to do when you get back to your institution? Well, you're already at yours. But.
Well, I'm already at mine, but the first thing I'm going to do is talk to everybody online and try to look for all these like collaborative ideas to be turned into projects and productions and awesome things. I'm very motivated, very inspired by everybody who I've met these few days. So that's what I'm going to do. We're already talking about developing a new course together, Iman and I. And that's exciting. So do you guys coming from other institutions want anything to say about that?
I'd just like to say that we live in amazing times and anything is possible, and we're just a tweet away.
We wouldn't be this if it weren't for his inspirational quote, right? Okay, then I think we're going to wrap this up. It was lovely talking to all of you. Thank you guys for coming, and thank you for waking up or staying up. And we'll see you guys online again and again.
All right.
Bye. Thank you.
So
Bye.
Thanks for bringing such a big crowd to the camera. I think that is one of the largest we've had on the other side.
Thanks, Alan.
Sure.
Alan.
Good to see you.
Bye.
Safe travel, Sean. For those still here, if you want to hang around, that's fine. But if you have to go, just let me know. But any reflections on all this, Susan? You've been there too at all of these events.
Yeah, I feel like I'm weaving it all together. I'm actually thinking about a blog post that's going to be titled "My Cairo." Seriously, I mean, it's like you can. If I I watched all the keynotes, and I did all the virtual connecting, and my brain is kind of mapping all that out right now, and bringing together some of the concepts that I mostly connected with, and I really want to write about that and see what emerges in the writing. Been taking a lot of notes and taking it in, but I'm a little slow sometimes in kind of getting it all together, and this has all been so new for me as well. But it's when you said, all these docs and all these things, Sean gave me a great piece of advice around just taking it slow, like, do what you can and conceptualize and be in each space. And I'm getting faster at it. I feel like you guys are really fast. And so it's been nice to allow myself and give myself permission to just slowly move through these things and then go, a Google Doc, deconstructing Blackboard, really? And sit with that for a little bit and enjoy the morsel of that. Has been an interesting process through all this. And then the meta thing of just the reality that I have this digital identity now that's emerging for me personally, but I'm also in this world in such a it feels well organized yet chaotic all at the same time. It's fascinating that this is actually possible, and I get it now and I see it, and the orienting is very much happening, and I want to gift this to some great minds that I work with and see if they want to engage in this. It's wonderful.
It's common to have that overwhelmed feeling, or that everybody's so far ahead, which is the biggest illusion out there. So we're just faking it.
Nice.
Yeah. You kind of, this isn't a good metaphor because it certainly doesn't go with the ones Alan came up with, but it's like you're sort of once you start getting connected, you just sort of keep getting connected. It just keeps happening. And your learning environment, sometimes they call it formally virtual learning environment. I think I may have said that the other day about something else. But it's going to develop differently, and it's not going to look like everybody else's. And that's what makes it interesting sometimes. You think, oh, well, they've got all this other stuff figured out. And no, that's just what they're seeing, right? And you can't see exactly what somebody else sees through their network connections, and they can't see exactly what you see, and yours can be just as rich or richer, without worrying about who's ahead or who figured something else out. But fortunately, Alan, is it safe to say that we're like beyond a network, like we're networked, but we're also kind of a community, as Sean, I think, was saying as well?
Yeah. Like you couldn't even map it. It's so messy. It's morphing all the time. But
yeah, but the good news is that when we encounter each other, we're willing to help each other out. So it's not like a who's ahead, or doggone it, so and so's figured this other space out, and I just got my account the other day, and so it's not a competitive thing, and that's what's, I think, better about this type of connecting. What we're doing, the fact that it's like, oh gee, I'm face to face with Cogdog, that which is something that in other types of encounters, I don't think that happens as much. There's more of a competition thing going on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's great to hear. I do have one question. I don't know. This is a little bit specific, and we don't have to go here too long. But maybe I just should ask Sean this directly. But I'm curious about these ideologies. Critical digital pedagogy, the sort of emergent learning. just these wonderful, almost tenets I'm putting together that are transforming and conceptualizing the way I design education, which I'm beholden to do in my job and when I'm loving, and I want to start teaching now, which is great. But my dean at the School of Nursing is like, how do we do that in medical education? And how, it's like, it's so specific. These students need to know these skills because it's life or death, that people keep responding to me with that. And I'm struggling to sort of figure out, is this discipline specific? And he's like, all these people are in in humanities, aren't they? And I was like, yeah. And he's like, please find me this stuff. I love it for medical. And so I'm just wondering if you have any resources or thoughts about how I could do that.
Not offhand. It's definitely out there. I'm quickly thinking of people I know in the medical field. There is no field that this does not happen in, first of all.
Right.
But until your dean can sort of like have like a micro experience or to understand and to get out of the fact, out of the content mind space of all the content that you probably deal with, especially in that field, and just thinking about, the ways in which, talking about our approaches to that content, or the way we communicate, the way we can, share things besides, OERs, but our own human experiences as practitioners in this field.
Mm-hmm.
That's probably not very helpful in general. I'm still trying to think of people I know in medical education. It definitely goes on. I ran into people in paramedicine in Australia, and they're trying to figure out how they use social media, which is problematic because of
patient health information.
Yeah, but it's not like you don't always put patients, So I was thinking, like, you go to a scene, you don't actually have to show people what's going on at the scene, where you have to deal with that privacy, but they can sort of do like they do in sports, where they get together after an event and they talk about what happened without being specific. Because it's an intense experience, and we sort of need to sort of figure out where we have these common overlaps and none. So there are things we can do, and I will try to think.
You're asking about how to apply this kind of nonlinear teaching.
Yeah.
Strategy to nursing education.
Yeah.
And
like encourage my faculty to allow for more discoverable, emergent, opportunities in the classroom to create that. And I do believe it can be done in medical education. But I am curious about where that line whereas you can't, because it's a specific prescriptive outcome.
Well, they seem to they have this hard science view of knowledge, as being so boxed in containers, and everybody has to master this and that and the other thread, as their approach to education is really from an instructionist viewpoint. So I think the way into these teaching traditions is to the way for us into it is to kind of ferret out the humanities angle in it. Like if you're teaching nursing, well, it always includes ethics somewhere, and this is basically humanities field. You can look at. I was just thinking when you were talking. I was thinking of Glasser's work in grounded theory. His first work was done in about dying, and he was working with nurses, trying to pin down how they felt about dying. They're working with dying people, and he didn't say, "Oh, I cannot do this research with doctors and nurses because it's a humanities subject," But just find a way into it, and from there you just ignore them when they're talking about, "Oh, we have to cover this content and that content and the other." Just ignore that and let them get on with it. And after they see you sort of weaving in and out of their topics, they might start to understand exactly what's going on.
And there's always tapping into current events, which is stuff that your content can't deal with. so many health issues going on around the world
Yeah.
that you don't have to sort of like explain it all, but people can sort of use it as a start of inquiry. You know, what are the issues?
I think that's really easy to do a lot of the times. I was working with medical students a couple of years ago, and we were talking about robotics, and this took us to engineering and you know, these surgical robots that have been developed recently. One of the most common operations is a hysterectomy. So the one that they can do with this machine, and they have this enormous machine that does hysterectomies. And so we talked about this, you know, oh, here's the machine. Are you going to replace the doctor with this machine? And would you trust the machine, you know, on yourself or on somebody you loved? Would you trust it? And how does it work? And there's all kinds of questions around it that are basic again, so ethical questions and human questions. We weren't talking about how the machine worked. We're talking about how people interact with the machine and the technology. And this opens up a lot of different avenues, you know, about technology and about you can take it all different places, you know. You don't have to make a list.
Yeah. Thank you, Mark.
Yeah, I want to maybe emphasize what Mark said, that, you know, like the ethics topic is a good one. My campus just had its annual ethics and business forum, and I just stopped short of doing air quotes around it because it would involve the business college, right? But it was like ethics and business, and it was all about AI. It was just an entire forum on artificial intelligence.
Nice.
And so they had some of the quote content, some of the science was in there, but it was not all about the science. It was about another type. It was another type of a conversation where the computer scientists, the roboticists, you know, they were there, and there were also the pure ethicists there. There was one, like our resident philosopher, because we're a small college, so our actual philosopher showed up, and so, you know, that kind of thing. And they were all in the same room, in the same forum, all talking about this stuff to a packed house, right? So it was okay that they weren't focused strictly on the content of like the state of AI and so on. But I think that is one of the areas where you literally can't keep up with everything, and so you have to have a different type of a conversation that is not just about completing modules and learning particular content. You have to have another kind of a conversation in order to make that conversation worthwhile. So I think that's one way to force it. Another thing that is helping me, but it's really messing up my teaching in a way. If my teaching has been forced to evolve, is that if you actually make it not about the teaching, the social side here, I mean. If you make the social side more about the learning than about the teaching, it actually changes your perspective. So I'm, you know, even though I love to have my students do certain things and complete certain things, and there is certain, you know, there are required course outcomes, none of that's really gone away. Trying to make it about their learning as opposed to am I covering the content, it changes the conversation with my colleagues, with, you know, the deans, whoever, right?
Yeah.
And it doesn't always go well, and it's not always smooth. It really isn't. Because there's still, it's like, oh, but, you know, if this is the only course they get in that, then you've got to do this content. Yeah, I know that, right? You know, I'm not saying they don't. I'm saying that they're learning, if they're learning outside the classroom in particular ways, if they're networked in particular ways, which they are, you know, all the students, all the nursing students for that matter, they're all networked outside of class. They are. And they're all, you know, they still text each other. They still use social media. They just don't use it for class, right? And regardless, right? It's all happening. So why not in the service of the subject matter as well? You know?
Yeah.
But make it about the learning and not about, you know, your teaching. And, you know, it's just it's kind of a mind flip, if you will.
And it can happen as kind of a periphery of some of the collaborative technologies, like having people collaboratively use a Google Doc, which sounds pretty mundane for people who've been doing it a while, can sort of just because it's a social activity. And it's why I'm really excited about the hypothesis annotation tool, because to me, the whole idea of reading papers was you do it alone and then you're supposed to come up with some, grand conclusion. And the fact that you're kind of reading with other people turns it into almost a conversational activity. And then, you can choose when some of these are not just limited to your class. So, when you can do things that allow some of the, Alacoris talks about the thinning of the classroom walls, where you set up something where people from the outside might be connecting with your students. So you get out of that box of just me and my students.
Yeah, I'm working hard on that. I've gotten pushback from the registrar, who's very nervous to allow Twitter in the classroom. So I'm actually, and my Twitter network gave me policies from other medical institutions. But not to waste time complaining, but it's been a tough road for me. This is a very risk-averse university. We're not allowed to use Google Docs at all. Students do it anyways, but they're not allowed to say in the classroom, hey, we're going to go to Google Docs now, or I think I might be able to squeeze in a hypothesis page at this sort of risk-averse institution that's mostly run by the hospital. It's kind of a college that's tacked on, so we're really not, we don't identify as a university, which is sad because the technology decisions by the CIO are made by the hospital.
I'll pass on some advice I got from a 7-year-old who was trying to teach me how to do ice skating, and she said, baby steps. Baby steps. And it sounds obvious, but, I still can't ice skate very well, but,
And so a great baby step. I'm not alone, thank you.
Google Docs. You're not allowed to say Google Docs in your classroom. It's like Voldemort.
So true. My old boss who just retired said, you can't say Google Docs, and it's been a running joke in our whole office.
You call it potato or something.
Right.
I was teaching in Saudi Arabia, and they had all of these policies about students' communications, and I was using Moodle and organizing my in-class with Moodle. It was a little bit of a strange setup in the university. We had male and female students in the same classes, but the women were in a balcony, kind of like, in a synagogue when the women are upstairs, and they were up there behind smoke glass. And there was not supposed to be any interaction between the male and female students, but we were all on the LMS, So we had to do something, to block them from talking to each other on the LMS, and there was all this complication. We're trying to keep them separated. So what the students did, they went away and they started a Facebook page, and they talked to each other on Facebook outside of the.
Yeah.
But they were sitting in class and texting each other on Facebook, and it was like Google Docs in your. We could use Google Docs. That was okay.
Yeah.
In Saudi Arabia, the most important thing is not to ask anybody for permission to do anything. Because, then they have to answer you. You just do it without asking.
So that's a good question. So it's beyond the obvious HIPAA and FERPA, which are actually not as intrusive in the online world as people sometimes believe. They're not intrusive at all. I think you already know that because you're here talking to us, right? but everybody else, that your colleagues down the hall, they don't know that yet, right? And that is a challenge. And even like on my campus is a young campus billed as an electronic campus, blah, blah, blah. No, there's colleagues all over the place who actually don't really, they say, oh, we can't, meanwhile, we can't, because FERPA violation, blah, blah, blah. We do have a very small nursing program, so we don't get a lot of HIPAA objections, right? But we do get, we hear about FERPA this and that, and we're going, well, don't put your students' personal information online. How hard is that? And then just keep doing what you're doing. And you know what? Your students can be online without violating anything because they're the students. And let them, you don't stop them. You stop you because you work for the university, and watch yourself. But the students can do whatever the heck they want, and they're doing it anyway. They're already doing it. And everybody's pretending that they're not doing it. And you probably have several colleagues who actually really don't know. And then you have colleagues who know but are pretending that your students aren't doing Google Docs, right? Or whatever. But they actually know, and it's forbidden. It's like this, Saudi Arabia thing that Mark was mentioning. It's like they probably know, but as long as you don't, make it, an open discussion, then everybody just goes on about their business.
Yeah.
And that's an odd way to live, but
It is an odd way to live. But it's happening, and I think I'm very optimistic as a result. I love it when students drive the innovation. They drive the changes, and I empower them as much as I can. When they come and complain to me, I'm like, let's go complain to the dean, or whatever. Let's track this, and absolutely there.
So do you have written policy, or is it all oral tradition and, Maury's, that kind of thing, where it's like, oh, well, we don't interact online. It's just because we don't. Or is there an actual policy?
That's a good question. I think it's mostly oral right now, and just like, well, we don't have a policy about how to use it, so you can't yet until we write it. So that's the stage that we're at right now.
But is that even true, that everything that is not in a policy is forbidden? Is there even, does it even say that anywhere?
That's a great question, George. That's a perfect
That's backwards.
Strategy.
Whatever isn't prohibited is allowed, obviously. It's like that everywhere.
Yeah.
And no matter how much you try to control and build a wall of sand on the beach, the ocean's gonna come around the corners and.
It's coming fast. I've been trying to tell everybody. I'm like, you guys, this is. You have no idea what we're missing, but also how far behind we are. And this walled garden, it's crumbling around us. I mean, I'm seeing it every day, and I'm loving it, But and I'm enjoying. You guys are giving me how to be poised and ready for that crumble, and embracing it. It's happening. Every day I get up, I look on Twitter, and I'm like, here we go. This is a story unfolding in front of us right now. Yeah. And it's fascinating.
You're going to be fine, and you're not alone. But I'm going to leave you because I need to eat breakfast.
And I'm kind of there. Actually, it's garbage day here, and one of the trucks went by already, and I'm hoping it was the right one because I have one more can to get out that's not out there yet. So
happy garbage day.
Yeah, thank you. So
thanks, everyone.
Let me mention Mike Caulfield because you used that metaphor. Are you connected with Mike Caulfield yet? Because if not, then that's our next mission because that garden and stream stuff he has a particular way of expressing that.
Okay.
That you might find interesting. So we can catch up offline too. I think I'm the only George Station out there, and there may be more than one Susan Adams in the entire in all of Twitter zone. But hang on.
Great. Well, thanks for joining, Susan and Mark and George and
thank you so much.
I love the post-talk conversations. In fact, I sometimes I regret when the V connecting when everybody just disconnects.
This is great. True. Okay, so Alan, probably I couldn't get to DML last time, but I may try to do it this next round. So I'll be there, and I might be out in that way anyhow for some other project stuff this year. Okay. Good to see you. Good to interact in person here.
Likewise.
I mean, synchronously, and where we can see each other. Cool.
You get all my stupid old jokes, George. So that's.
Well. I mean, it's like, hey, you were there with Horseshack, so I guess we're another common era there. Okay. Talk to you soon.
All right. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye. Thanks so much.